if we reverse engineer the whole education conversation, and we take a 25-year-old man or woman that is entering into the world with the qualities that are necessary to be successful, happy, have a meaningful life, how much is the role of education in creating that human being? How much comes from the educational system? How much comes from the family? What should be on the shoulders of education to create that person that is able to look at life and have a meaningful experience?
So we start with an easy question.
I thought we build a house from the roof this time.
Yeah, I think a lot depends on how you define education. If we're looking at an education system, like you said, something that's maybe run by the government or run by kind of bigger parts of society, then that's one type of education. And if we're looking at the home and the family life, that's can be seen as another type of education. So yeah, to put kind of those two main ones together, which is kind of this education system and the family, we're at a really challenging moment right now, because what usually happens in education is people are a bit further down the path. So if I'm, say, a 40-year-old and I'm looking at a 25-year-old, I can look back at my experience and say, well, I wish I had known this when I was 25, or these are the things I knew when I was 25 and it really helped me. So I want to pass this on to you, and I want to help you in your path so that when you get to 40, you're hopefully happier than I am. Or more productive, or whatever the paradigm is, the metric. But now we have people that are at 40 looking back at the 25-year-olds and saying, we don't really know what's going on. We have these huge existential situations like climate change or AI, and we're in this difficult situation where we don't really know what we're supposed to do. And so looking back at the people that are coming behind us, it's really hard to tell them, well, we think you should do this or we should do that. I mean, this has always existed to some extent, right? That there's always been a gap between the 25-year-olds and what the world was like when I was 25, and it's changed. But now the world is changing so fast that this gap is quite big. And really the world, it's really hard for people to imagine what a world will look like in even 6 months to a year. And so it's a huge challenge right now in education. And I think really for me, the answer is that teaching, you have to have some type of adaptability built into whatever you're teaching. So this old way of saying, well, we're going to teach you all the things someone is supposed to know, and then that will prepare you for what's coming. We can't do that anymore, because we don't know what's coming in a big way. And so to me, this is a big shift that education has to take, is shifting away from kind of content based. So we're going to teach you about this and that. We're going to teach you the French Revolution. You have to know all the dates of the French Revolution. And to shifting to more of an understanding, a way to engage in education which is based on understanding and based on the skill to adapt, which comes with a lot of dealing with problems and challenges in a different way than traditionally has been dealt with in education.
So instead of an accumulation of knowledge, that then you have to also open up if the knowledge is actually true or not, where it's coming from, vet your sources and all that. So you're focusing, or the moment requires more than we focus on skills or qualities.
Yeah.
So you mentioned adaptability.
Yeah.
Which other qualities are really, really important at the moment for a young person?
Yeah.
For everybody, yeah.
For everybody, yeah. So one, when we're talking about skills, I usually break it down, and I'm not the only one doing this. Many people break it down into kind of these broad categories. But obviously skills are especially when we're talking about these life skills, skills that are going to help us navigate life, they always interweave. So I break it down into skills that we use to connect with ourselves, skills that we use to connect with people around us, and then skills that we use to connect with the world, so the bigger picture. And really, in the spirit of adaptability, in the spirit of, of kind of meeting people where they are, it's each one of these categories will look different depending on the group. But they do have kind of overall skills that you will find almost always within different groups. So for example, a connection to self would be emotional awareness, to understand in whatever way you choose how emotions come up, what they do, how you can process them in maybe healthy ways or unhealthy ways. If you're looking at the group, connection to others, some type of listening will always come up, sometimes active listening, being open, being receptive to someone else. And the connection to the world, usually there's some type of literacy and numeracy involved in this. It's understanding the world through words or expression, and also understanding it through this quantifiable, almost scientific way. But really, it depends on what group you have in front of you and what their needs are. So the four main pieces that I have in my approach is one, the skills, which is this part of the other, the self and the world. And then the other piece that goes with it is the needs. And this comes from nonviolent communication. But in a traditional school, they set up a curriculum. I mean, this is changing now, but it's still more or less, this is the way that most state-run schools or private schools work, is that they decide, okay, a 14-year-old should know this, 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 this. It doesn't matter where that 14-year-old is, what's going on in their life, if they're a mature 14-year-old, if they're immature 14-year-old, it doesn't matter. They need to know these things. And if at 14 they cannot, for whatever reason, know these things, there's something wrong with that 14-year-old. And if they can know these things, then that's great. The 14-year-old can then move up to the next level. And what I've done, and which has given me huge success, and shown me things that I never saw in 20 years of education, is instead of starting with an idea of what the kids should know, I start with the kids. I start with the students, whoever is in the group, and I look, okay, what are their needs? What do they need to thrive? Not just survive, not just water, food, and this, but do they have a need for collaboration? Do they have a need for solitude? Do they have a need for relaxation? Do they have a need for adventure? And from there, that's where it gets really interesting, because on a one-to-one basis, it's quite simple in a way once you get used to it, to kind of figure out what each person's needs are. But when we get a group of, say, 14 kids together, and you start seeing,
it gets interesting.
Yeah, but the beautiful thing is, and I didn't really get this until I started working with it, is I kept on hearing NVC, you work through, I mean, for people that don't know NVC, it has these 4 steps, general steps you work through: observations, emotions, needs, and then you get to requests. And they always said, separating the observations, the emotions, and identifying the needs is the hard work. And the solutions, the requests part, just comes naturally after the needs. And I heard this a lot with NVC, and I was like, I don't know, that seems kind of fairy tale, like it can't be true. But when I was working with the kids, it really was happening on a daily basis.
Could you give me an example or something?
Sure. So we would say we're organizing a field trip, and we have one group of kids that want to go play paintball. So they're really all about paintball. We can only go to do one field trip. And another group of kids want to go camping. And, they're just yelling at each other, paintball, 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 camping, camping, camping. I want paintball, I want camping. And this is a real example, actually. We went through and we said, okay, so let's look at the observations. Let's look at what we have. Okay, we have a 1-day trip. We have, I forget how much it was, but say 36 hours. This is our budget. This is the limits in terms of location, all of these things. Then we went through the emotions. People had that space where they can say, I'm so frustrated because I just want paintball. And then we got to the points of the needs. And this was really saying, okay, so why is paintball so important to you? Why is it really this paintball? And why is it camping? And from there, we understood that the paintball group had a huge need for adventure. They wanted to do something. It got their adrenaline going. They really wanted to get out there and do something adventurous. And the other group, their main need was a connection to nature. So as soon, like literally as soon as, I think it was one of the kids actually said, oh, you have a need to connect with nature, everyone raised their hand. Like, let's go surfing. Let's go camp on the beach and go surfing. Out of 14 kids, all of them were 110% super enthusiastic.
Beautiful.
Because they're like, wow, yeah, this fulfills our needs.
So there was a fictitious misunderstanding or a fictitious conflict of interest.
Yeah.
And then when you dig a bit deeper, it could be combined into one.
Exactly. And this we kept on using again and again and again. And it creates this beautiful space where first it starts with the educator helping them identify their needs on an individual level. But then eventually the group got so good at identifying the needs, they got fluent in identifying needs, and they caught on to this idea that if we spend time identifying the needs, then I'm going to be happier. So even the people that were kind of coming at it from an egotistical point of view would still buy into this system, because they knew if they just sat there and said paintball, 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 they wouldn't have as good of time as if they go through the process and find out, oh, actually surfing is even better. And at the same time, it created compassion in them.
Yeah.
Because they're constantly tuning in to other people.
Developing empathy.
And so then from there it went crazy, right? We had a boy come in to do a trial day, and he was neurodiverse. He had a bunch of, to put it bluntly, he was very socially awkward. You know, he was very outside of what the norms of social interaction is. And so he came in and he was laughing when no one else was laughing, and he wasn't laughing at the jokes, and he was kind of speaking really loud and kind of disrupting the class, not out of any bad intention. It's just he was being who he was, and it wasn't lining up with what we were doing. And so he came and he did this day where it was just for him to try out the project. And the next day I came in and I asked the group, and at that point we had a small group, and it was mainly these boys that were there, 13-year-old boys. And I came in to say, what about, what do you guys think about this guy, And they're like, oh man, he really was out of sync with us, and he was really kind of in moments where it was kind of cringe and kind of like, oh, it was awkward and this and that. And so I was like, oh yeah, so I guess he's not going to come to the project. I don't know if we can hold that. And they said, no, he has to come here, because he'll get eaten alive at any other school. No, he needs to come here. If his parents don't send him here, we want to write to the parents. We want to talk to him. He has a need to be here. They were so loving.
Very touching, yeah.
And these are 13-year-old boys. Come on. I don't know what you were like. When I was 13, I was not compassionate. I was very much in my thing. And this started happening over and over and over. And eventually I clicked in, this is a needs piece. This is really bringing this out in them, that they're...
Because you're giving them a lot of responsibility, but somehow you're not letting them just handle it like a dead weight. You're giving them a tool as well.
Yeah.
Is it difficult to implement such a mechanism of communication in a group? Does it take a running time until it feels comfortable?
Yeah. There's a lot of challenges. One of the main challenges is that it puts a lot of responsibility on the educator. Because if I'm a teacher and I'm teaching in a regular school, I come in and I have my history book, and it has all the stuff I have to teach, and I have kind of almost a schedule.
When you say the educator, you mean the single educator, not the school,
educator.
but the person.
The person, yeah. Because if I come in as a teacher and I'm showing a history book and I start teaching history, and one of the parents is concerned about something I'm teaching, or there's some kind of conflict with this, I have a whole entire system behind me. So I could say, hey, I'm just teaching what's in the book. If you have a problem with the book, go talk to the principal of the school or the Ministry of Education or the government. This has nothing to do with me. Whereas if I'm holding the space on a needs base,
You are
I'm the
responsible.
one making a lot of these calls, because at first you as the educator really have to tune into the children or the teens or whoever, the group, and really have to start identifying the needs, but also allowing space for them to start. So it's this dance. And then at the same time, if you are good at identifying the needs, if you're accurate at identifying the needs, you'll start creating satisfaction in the learners. So they'll start. I mean, a lot of these alternative projects, they think, oh, let the kid do whatever they want, follow their curiosity, follow their passion. Yes, and make sure they're satisfied at the end. Make sure that they take on a project or a challenge that is going to challenge them, and that they come through and some kind of need is met. And so this creates this situation that as you start helping these kids satisfy needs, they tune into like, whoa, I'm feeling capable, I'm feeling empowered, I'm feeling heard, I'm feeling like I'm getting better at understanding where I'm at with the group. It creates this kind of safe tribe space. And from there, the trust goes up in the educator, which then creates this beautiful space where the educator can come in and say, you guys need to know spreadsheets, or I'm trying to think of the most boring thing that you could teach. And the kids would be like, okay, let's do it. Because I know that you're not going to bring it to me unless you think it's absolutely useful and it's going to satisfy a need. And I know that no matter how boring or dry or uninterested I am in this, at the end, I'm going to feel like a need was met. And so, yeah, this whole process looks very different than someone coming into a class, sitting in a seat. Okay, now here's this, you copy it down. Here's what's in the book. We're going to talk about this. It's a very different process. And
but here also it's not just the thing, but it's also in which context it's placed in. Because if I imagine the movie and there is a boring school and it comes the special teacher that treats but he still has the support of an organization. So if you're the special teacher in the special school, who catches you?
So this is a big question.
I mean, when everything goes well, you're gonna get all the medals, and the parents are gonna come and give you cake and But when shit hits the fan, you're very exposed.
Very, very exposed.
How does that feel? How does that? Do you feel like always on the edge when?
Yeah, it
especially with teenagers, that maybe there is more feelings in the air.
Yeah.
Because if you don't enjoy it, then no one will enjoy it. So you somehow have to enjoy that way of working. And then you have to have a group that catches you, or a system or something.
Yeah, there is, I mean, the idea that this puts a lot more responsibility on the educator, I find this is definitely true. It doesn't necessarily have to put all of the responsibility on the educator.
But is there a recognition of that? Let's say you start the education year and everybody gathers together and says, yes, we give responsibility to the educator.
Yeah, I think this is a safe way to do it.
So there is almost like a formal...
This is a huge challenge, is that parents and educators and people that work in education, all of us, we've been so conditioned on a really deep level to think that unless we're doing education with a school, with textbooks, with exams, that we're not doing it right, that we're missing out on something. And this process really, it can be an uncomfortable process. It can be a scary process because, along with the skills and the needs, there's two other parts, which is challenges and experiential learning. But with these kids, what I started doing, it was a very specific group where I kind of developed this pedagogy with the team and everything. It wasn't just me, but this approach. these kids started to, like in a traditional school, you give an assignment and you basically say, okay, here's the assignment, do it like I tell you to do it, and then we'll get good marks. So you're teaching kids to obey, basically, right? Obey well, and really, and then, yeah, then there's this confusing part where you might give, okay, there's 10 extra marks for creativity, but you still have to do it exactly like I want you to, but you can be creative. It's really, right, weird. In this approach, once the group is set and there's this idea of needs and being able to identify needs and being able to be in a safe place and being able to fail in front of each other, this is huge, to be able to say, I'm going to try this, and if it doesn't work out, I know that I'm still going to be accepted in the group. To get to this space, then you can start giving stuff to the kids where you just say, here's a challenge, right? And a lot of times it will be stuff that I don't know the answer to, right? I just had an argument with my friend, and now I don't know how to resolve this. What do you guys think? And then they can start using all of these skills they're working on towards real life problems. What happens is then they kind of get really good at it. And so sometimes at home, this will change the way they approach things. And so they'll start questioning more things. They'll start wanting to give input. And so this can be, for some parents, this can be a challenge. For other places where they go to work, it can be a challenge, right? If they go to work to a restaurant as washing dishes and they're saying, hey, I found a better way to wash dishes. Some people might not want to hear this. So it does involve a commitment and a certain understanding from anyone involved in the project that this is going to look very different than a regular education project. And what I found is that for most people, it goes well. When there are some moments of friction, if people get scared, they move to what they know. And then I've seen it where people will try and take this and water it down and recreate a regular school, kind of with this, no, we're doing this, but at the end, we're working on needs, we're working on allowing them to guide their own experience, but they still have to follow the textbook. And so you get this kind of mismatch.
Because the middle way is a very active path. Sometimes you just think, no, you just keep the middle between two extremes, but the extremes are constantly dancing.
Yeah.
So it feels much more like a tightrope.
Yeah.
So if you are the one that is proponing that traditional education is very boxing and very reducing, and it doesn't allow people to develop that sense of initiative and cooperation. And at the same time, on the other end, you have, if you just don't tell kids what to do and you let them run free, they'll have a great time for 10 minutes and then they're bored. So somewhere in the middle, but that middle has to be woven and cared for. So it's obvious that it's a difficult choice, but how do you navigate through those difficulties? We have discussed this, you still have enthusiasm for it, so the results that you see are very rewarding. And what I hear also is the fact that as they gain responsibility in overviewing the situation, they begin to cooperate almost without your input. Which means that the old idea of going to school to see if you get better grades than the others, somehow you are, helping each other and carrying each other. So in the difficulties to implement, let's go to one that is maybe very important and very common, which is the relationship between the educator, the school, and the parents. So parents, teachers, maybe you can clarify. I think you told me the difference between an educator and a teacher, just for dialectics. But then educators, teachers meet with parents, and both want the best interest of the child, in theory, but it's an art, no? So let's talk about that for a bit.
It's really complicated. So first, teacher and educator. I usually distinguish between teacher and educator, as a teacher is someone that works in a more of a traditional school in which they're not developing the curriculum at the same time. I'd say that would be kind of the split. A teacher is someone who is given a curriculum, given something to teach, and they can be very creative in the way that they teach, but they're not really deciding what they're teaching. They're deciding, okay, how do I teach it? How do I do this? Whereas an educator is doing both. They're deciding how to teach and also co-creating what they're teaching with their learners. Parents is, Parents is such a challenge. I think to frame it, I think one of the most common things I see with parents is that they approach education as they want the best for their child, which is fantastic. But they equate the best for their child as in my child should receive the most amount of attention, should receive the personalized help. It's like my child should be the most important person in that room. And so then, especially if you get a group of parents with this attitude, they're all kind of fighting to say like, oh, you need to spend more time with my child. Oh, you need to spend more time with my child. And I really tried to explain to them that this is an ecosystem, right? And so if the ecosystem was good, then everyone inside is going to be fine.
Because that's a mentality of scarcity, right?
Yeah.
There is not enough time, therefore
Yeah.
my kid has to be the one.
Yeah.
While if the whole classroom flows, everybody's learning better.
Yeah. And I would say this is a second. So the first is that this idea, and a lot of times it's subconscious, right? I mean, I don't know what's like for you, but for me, my daughter's the most important thing in the world. So of course I want the best for her, you know? But it is really this thing of saying, but the best is not for her specifically, the best is for the group. The second thing is that people equate parenting with teaching. And so they think, oh, I have kids, maybe I have a few kids at home. I'm a dad or a mother, and so yeah, I know what the teacher is doing in the classroom. It's the same as I do at home, just with more kids. And there's some truth to it. There's a lot of crossover skills. There's a lot of things that feel the same. But if I treated my daughter like a student, it would be a complete disaster. And if I treated my students like my kids, it would be a complete disaster. There's a big difference there, even though if it appears it's the same. And so this as well can be a challenge. And then if you put those two things together in a system that is open in so many ways, that a lot of the parents can think, well, I have a say in everything that's going on here, and I can decide everything that's happening. And so it's a huge challenge to find ways to bring the parents in, because with this focusing on the needs, you start with an individual and then the group, and then you want to spread it to the families. What are the needs in the families that we can help meet? What are the needs in the community? What are the needs of the world that we can help meet and satisfy and bring this satisfaction and happiness everywhere? So there is, at least for me, there's a big desire to bring the parents in, but it's super tricky. It's super tricky to bring them in ways where they feel like they're participating and they're active, and at the same time they're giving space for their kids to be in a different place that's not home, especially with adolescents. Adolescents need space from their parents, and yet they need adults that they can trust that aren't in the parent role, but are kind of in similar. They're adults that are helping them grow and develop. They really need this. So it's a tricky balance. And also because the way this education approach works, it's not going to look anything like what most people had growing up. So there's also this element of educating the parents as well of what's going on to keep them in the loop. And it's a huge challenge.
And furthermore, I had here Maisha a couple of months ago, and she grew up in Africa. So she was telling stories of growing up in a village and how the older kids were teaching the mid kids, and the mid kids were teaching the little kids, and the whole thing. She was saying maybe there was one adult supervising, and then with the elders. But kind of the whole ecosystem was something that you could feel had been similar for many generations. And now we face, even within each family tree, probably you don't live in the same village that your parents or the same city, and that already got discontinued from grandparents. So the line of lineage, tradition, culture, which I must admit when I was young, that those words scared a lot. It scared me a lot, but still, there is a transmission of something from the people that love you, that have lived before you, that now we have made global. Now is not my culture or my customs, but it's everybody's customs, which also means it's no one's customs. So that creates a vacuum of information that is being taken over by social media and technology to a great deal, yeah. So it's not just the challenge of implementing maybe a more effective educational system, but also, like you were saying in the beginning, it's happening in a moment where we don't know what the fuck we're doing. So when you try to be the orchestra director of this situation, you have different nationalities, different economic situations, people that have been traveling. I always thought this would be a positive when I was younger. It still feels like a positive?
Yeah, I think, I mean, there are positive aspects to it, you know. I mean, this is what I like about this approach is you're working from the group outward. So if you have a group of
10
Danish kids and they all share a similar lineage and culture, and then it still will work. It might make it easier in ways because the needs might be expressed in ways that are similar. So it might make it easier at first to identify the needs or not. And you might, if you have a mix of cultures and groups, and it gives a great opportunity to learn about difference and about tolerance.
Sounds like when it works, it would be so beautiful, but if it fails, it can also be more conflictive in a
way. With my experience with, so I had this one group, the way that this all started is I had this one group of kids, and we went up to Lisbon together. This was our first project. So it was about 10 of us. We went to Lisbon for a weekend. They helped organize a trip, and we got there, and the first night I said, okay, there's, I forget how much, maybe 40 euros. Here's 40 euros. You guys, you're gonna go to a grocery store, and your mission is to get dinner. So you need to buy dinner, and we go home and we cook it. That's our first mission, you know. So we go, and we spent 2 hours in the grocery store. 2 hours. And at the end, they were in this, I'll never forget, they were sitting in an aisle, all of them sitting, just like heads down, just like, oh, you know. And then at the end, we chose pasta and tomato sauce. That was what we got after 2 hours of harsh negotiations. And so I thought, oh, these kids don't have group decision. They don't know how to make a decision in a group. And I thought, well, I don't really either, you know. I know if someone is in charge, I know how to work in that, but when no one's in charge and we actually have to listen to everyone. So I started digging into sociocracy and nonviolent communication and put together this really quick course, rough course on how to make decisions together in a group. And the beautiful thing about where I was working at the time was because they had an open curriculum and they didn't say, well, you have to be teaching this or that, is that about 3 weeks after we went to Lisbon, I was teaching what they needed. And so I came in and I said, and at first they were super resistant. They're like, this, you know, this sucks. We don't want to learn this, blah, blah, blah. But eventually we got through it. And then they started seeing that they were making decisions together in a group. And then they started seeing value. And then we started working through it like that. But this is the idea. It all started from meeting a need of that group. And then to bring in the needs part and the group decision-making part, you're constantly tuning into differences and similarities. But from there, we started this kind of 3-year journey where just from that idea, we got into needs, we got into group decision-making, and this created this really safe container for these kids. And then I was in a different project with the same group of kids. We were continuing our work, and we basically got our new group of kids to come in. And at first, they were very much like public high school kids, let's say. They came in, you know, quite, I don't know, aggressive, bad attitude, you know, this kind of rebellious feel. And within 6 months, they had gotten on board with this other way of thinking. And we even had a kid that came and said, you know, in my last school, you had to be mean. That's how you got respect. And here you have to be nice to people. That's how you get respect. But they really, there's something happens when you give them this balance of here's your space and we're going to give you the tools you need to make decisions. And at the same time, supporting them as well, you know, and kind of guiding them through this transition.
Because similar as it is for the educator, that a system would liberate you from some responsibility.
Yeah.
For the student, it's the same.
Yeah.
A system, you learn how to play the game.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember to this day when my daughter was going to public school and I was explaining, listen, you will learn some stuff,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
mainly is a game.
Yeah.
You learn how to put the dots on top of the I's in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
right
yeah.
way, and you will get the grades that you
Yeah.
want. Yeah. At the same time that you learn the game, please learn a little.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's an easy way to delegate responsibility.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna gain more responsibility, both for the educator and for the student, it has to be worth it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like someone, like you said, makes you excited about that. Let's go to nature and go in surfing because you have understood that you are part of the decision making, and there is a reward system that can actually take you to a beautiful place.
Yeah.
So, from the perspective of the educator, let's see how I can phrase this. I can see how on a bad year you would be totally burnout.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can see on a good year you would come home and hard work, but you would have this moment with your partner and you say, oh, it's so rewarding.
Yeah.
Can you create, maybe not a system, but can you create a structure in place that would allow you to not get burned out? So the educator can give it its 100%, and on a difficult year not be totally destroyed.
Yeah.
Because I've seen that.
Yeah, I mean, it's very real what you're talking about. Teaching, educating, they're very unique jobs. It's you're really with anywhere from 10 to 30 different people at the same time. And I mean, in a regular school, you have 120, 200 students. So those 30 people are changing throughout the day. But it really pulls attention from you from different ways. So burnout is really, it's a real issue. I mean, part of it is that as you're helping the kids identify their needs, you're also helping yourself identify the needs. And therefore, it's much easier to take that to the group. I mean, the educator as well is involved in the group decision making. So this is also something where, I could take it to the group and say, hey guys, this week I'm super tired. I've got some personal stuff going on. I really have a need for rest this week. Do you think you could help me out? And the students can be like, yeah, this week we'll self-teach ourselves this, or we can work on this part that we don't need you as much and you can get some rest. But next week we're going to need you to be really present. So it creates part of the education system in itself opens up a way that you can also self-regulate your burnout.
But do you see this working in younger kids as well?
That's what I'm trying, experimenting now, yeah.
Because that sounds like you need to be 12, 13, 14 at least to have that way of approaching a situation, no?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working with 5 to 8-year-olds are the youngest I'm working with now. And yeah, it's a longer path, and so it takes a different shape, but already I'm seeing it working. We had the other day, we were going to go for a picnic area, and one girl wanted to picnic here and another wanted to picnic somewhere else. And without me saying anything, because we had gone through kind of these different ways of looking at conflict, not as something bad, but as an opportunity, she just said, we just have a different idea. That's no big deal. We'll have a picnic here this week, and next week we have it in my spot. Is that okay with you? Yeah, it's okay. Okay, good.
How old?
She's 5. And this is it, And as you get good at identifying needs, and as like I'm seeing the whole, she's just thinking, oh, picnic here and then next week. But to me, I'm seeing all that's going on there, and it's almost easier in a way because you can encourage it to come out before they even learn some other way of doing it that they have to go against.
Well, the way we see reality is through a coding. So you are giving them the possibility to create another kind of coding, like another way of dealing with situations altogether.
Yeah. Getting back to the burnout thing, though, for me, the kids, I got so much energy from the kids and from doing this with them. I mean, as a teacher in a regular school, I have 2 of my best friends in Canada still teach in regular schools. And I remember when I started in a regular school, maybe once a month, once every 2 weeks, I'd have maybe 5 or 10 minutes where we would be in between teaching and something would come up, and we'd have like a real conversation about with the kids, like all this, oh, Mr. Rob, this Friday, this party, oof, oh, what happened? What happened? Now give me the dirt. And you get into something that's alive for them. But usually it's 5 to 10 minutes. They say, oh, okay, well, we're going to go back to study North Korea, and then you lose them. And my friends in Canada have said with time, they've gotten better at, they can usually make those 5 to 10 minutes happen maybe every day or every other day. They can create these live moments in the classroom. For me, it was the complete opposite. Maybe once a month, I'd have 5 to 10 minutes of something dead. The rest of the time would be completely alive. And this energy, especially with this youthful energy, where they're willing to give so much stuff a try, to me, it was the opposite. It brought me up.
Yeah.
And also in a way, the workload changes because you're allowing them to guide it. It's not so much that I needed to prepare things really, spend a lot of time preparing and planning lessons. It was more kind of someone would talk about, I don't know, something that was alive for them, maybe transgender politics or something like that maybe I don't know a lot about. So I start listening to some podcasts, read some book on it, and kind of get my head around a bit of what's going on, but I don't have to do anything with it. Or maybe someone else is interested in, something else that I don't know.
With those kind of polemic or divisive subjects, how do you present it? They decide to talk about the subject and you become kind of like a silent observer? Because when they're very polarizing, you might have conflicts, you might have someone said, my father said, whatever, yes? So you have, people can be very tribal about certain things, yes? So when those subjects arise, especially in those years, how do you navigate the muddy waters?
Yeah. So
you went home, you study, but then you come with conclusions, or?
No, it can be. We had an example of this. We had someone brought in a rainbow flag, and they wanted to put it up because they wanted people to understand that this space was it was a welcoming space for everyone, regardless of gender identity or sexuality, or everyone was welcome here. And they hung it up. And then one of the girls came and said to me, I don't feel comfortable talking about it in the group, but I don't want that flag here. It makes me really uncomfortable. And my first reaction was like, whoa, like, no, you need to be tolerant. Me telling her, being intolerant of what she just said by saying, no, you need to be tolerant. But I was like, okay, run me through what's going on. And she talked about kind of her views on it and she had a certain logic to it. And so I said, okay, well, it sounds like you have a need to discuss this with the group, but you also have a need for safety. So you're not feeling safe to bring it up in the group. And in the end, she had an older brother. And she said, can he come in and kind of be my spokesperson? And so I said, yeah, we'll run it by the group. And so we went to the group and we told them that there's someone here that feels uncomfortable. And can we bring this person in? First thing they did is they took the flag down. They're like, someone's uncomfortable. Let's just take it down till we sort this out. Very first thing. As I'm telling this, a student just got up and went over and took the flag down and brought it. And no one questioned.
I love the picture of the dynamism that it creates in them. Yeah, like the decisions that you're describing. Yeah. Beautiful.
And then, the next day, or I think the following week, this brother came in. And it was beautiful on so many levels because a lot of these kids are getting taught how to enter into conversations by social media.
Of course, yeah.
So they're coming with sound bites, they're coming with phrases, but they're not coming with an understanding of their position.
And also with an invitation to belong to this or that group.
Exactly.
And then you have a t-shirt that is pink or blue, and then that you're stuck there. Yeah.
So whoever gets the label out first.
Exactly.
You're transphobic. You're fascist. You're whatever. And then the conversation is.
So this is pre-making decisions. Let's open the conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
And he went.
So first of all, the brother came in. He had notes. And this is great because he destroyed everyone in the argument. He was being, what about this? What about this? And I've looked up the facts here and this and this. And all they had was like, you're transphobic. You're transphobic. And he's like, okay, maybe I am, but I'm talking about these things and I have a real problem with this. And so it was a great learning moment for that, saying, you guys came to something that was super important for you. No one prepared. right? No one prepared. So this is
because that's the lesson. It's not that he was right or wrong.
he was more
but if you
prepared.
really believe into something, what do you have to support? Yeah.
So this is a minor, but all of this in NVC, right? Because you're saying, oh, I see that you're getting frustrated. You have a frustration because you have a need to express, or you have a need for understanding first for yourself, and you have a need to express that. Well, he doesn't seem frustrated because he's found his own understanding and he's prepared himself to express it. Anyways, this was a minor thing. What happened at the end is there was one person there who used, I don't know how to say this now, but didn't use the pronouns that society would traditionally give to this person. They were exploring gender identity. And this person was really shocked and said, I can't believe, this is so important for me. This makes me feel safe here. And you're taking that away, blah, blah, blah. And it got really, really tense. And as it's getting tense, it's like you feel it like, okay, we're getting into that space, the social media space. And then this person said, but you know what? We're a group, we're a tribe. And if you're uncomfortable, then forget it. I'll be uncomfortable for you. And the flag never went up. And that was it. It was so infused in them that the most important thing was compassion. And we work out the politics. We can have our differences, and they're important, and we can't ignore them. But if we get to this point where they're clashing, we always have to choose compassion.
Because that clashing, it's a software that is almost being plugged into people as a virus.
Yeah.
And then, so you can almost think that the way to break almost every conflict is by taking a step back, taking an exhale, see, instead of being against each other, let's look at this together. And almost that in itself feels like it can be the core of education, as we were talking before. Because if you identify the need, it doesn't matter if it's a community, a farm, a neighborhood, or a family, and then you manage to kind of make everybody work towards that need, and then you have happiness.
This is it.
I mean, life will still happen, but that sounds almost like an ideal political system in a way.
And this would happen all the time. These examples of, we had a learner that had severe mental health issues, and again was creating these very awkward, sometimes unsafe situations. And I have to be careful because I get quite emotional because these moments, it's so beautiful. I sat for an hour and a half. We were having Portuguese classes, and this came up. This person's always swearing at other people, blah, 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 blah. And for an hour and a half, we unfolded it. And the level of understanding of their own needs and the other people's needs, and the person wasn't there, but the level of compassion they had for this person, of saying, wow, like, we can't imagine what it's like to live with this. At the same time, we have a need for efficiency, we have a need for organization, we have a need for respect. How can we do? And they really were searching. There wasn't this question, there was never a question of pushing this person out. It was always like, how are we going to figure this out? How are we going to keep this person here, make them feel held, and make sure that we're having our needs met?
Yeah, because there's such maturity in being able to recognize the collective when you're so young, because the collective is, when you're very young, the collective is your football team and your colors and your tribe, but in a very exclusive way, So if you manage to break through that programming and you actually allow them to see a collective that can have many colors, like a proper rainbow collective, then it's very powerful. If they don't disengage themselves as an individual in the collective, but because they have the responsibility to actually see how they would get the solution to the situation they're already involved. Do you see this scalable? Like the way you describe is a small school, or would you see like a big institution that would work like this?
I don't see why not. I mean,
do you know of any that already kind of sailing successfully? No,
I don't. The project I was at, we were working with this pedagogy because we were working with teenagers that were coming up to 18. A big challenge for us was trying to find a way to get accreditation. So at the end, when they're 18, they get a high school diploma or they get a transcript, because we didn't want to limit their options. And so if they...
Accreditations, do you have to show the meeting of a certain curriculum?
It depends a lot on each country, how they're going to accept it. I mean, the traditional way is that you go through a public school or a private school that's recognized by the state, and then you get your diploma. There are these spaces opening up now with homeschooling where you will participate in a homeschooling organization, and that homeschooling organization is either recognized by the state or is its own form of accreditation. Then there's schools that are built off international curriculum, so IGCSEs and the A levels, the English curriculum. This is Valverde here and Al Jazeera International School working off that, so they get their accreditation from this international system, which then is recognized by the universities. But it's all kind of pushed from the universities, right? The universities say we want kids that can do this to get into our programs, and then they gets translated down into what the high schools or these programs.
So the university is the sucking entity,
and ultimately it's I mean, now it's the tech companies, but it's whatever industry is dominant is ultimately telling the universities what kind of employees they want, and then the universities are setting up programs to fulfill that, and then they're telling the high schools what kind of students they want to come in to. So it's
how does money play a role in all that? Because the universities that are more prestigious, they will have more weight in making this decision.
Yeah, I would say
But
the relationship.
you need a lot of money to get into those as well. So how does the class affect the system?
This is, I mean, again, it depends on the country, but yeah, it has a huge effect on it. And I would say maybe not so much the fact that there's money involved in, say, these Ivy League schools, but I think just the connection is so much closer, that so many people that work at Google or ChatGPT or work in these companies, they went to Harvard, so therefore they have a connection there. And so when people come in, there's this bias of, oh, you went to the same school I did. So there's multiple layers of this. And when at this project, when we were negotiating, it was not possible to find a way to have this program accredited. And so in the end, we decided to just continue doing what we were doing and figure out the accreditation at some other point, or really just say, well, we're going to give them an amazing education, and then maybe afterwards they have to do a 6-month high school equivalent course or something to that. Scalable, yeah, it is scalable. It's scalable in the same way as maybe permaculture is scalable, or all these other ideas that I think are getting implemented on a small scale, many places. But for permaculture or some of these kind of quote unquote alternative systems, in my opinion, there needs to be a radical shift in the global perspective, in the kind of bigger pieces for it to be scalable. Because right now, I can imagine bringing this system in and this approach, and the system itself would be like, well, how do we measure kids, and how do we, and so we don't have to measure them. It's all skills based. And well, how do we do exams, and how do we organize? And the university would be like, how do we know who's going to be better at math? Or it's like, well,
the way you are presenting it, it almost sounds like it has to be bottom up than top down, because that feeling that you were demonstrating before, that like it really touches you to see how it works. If a small cell would be strong to generate that feeling and then grow from there, it would convince. But there is a lot of challenges to do it that way.
There is also, I mean, tech companies now are asking for people that are creative, asking for people that are problem solvers. And so there is this, I do see this, I mean, I think it's quite slight, but this thing where the tech companies as well would be saying, we don't want people that are just going to follow the rules. We want the rule breakers. We want people who are going to think outside the box, but really think outside the box. And, these kids that I was working with, this is, I mean, every day you're just throwing them challenges and problems to solve. So that muscle, or those muscles in them is, they're pro athletes in this, right? This is their comfort zone, is getting, they'd be miserable in a place where they're just told what to do. They'd be very happy in places where they get to be truly creative. So I could see it coming that way, but it's a long shot.
If a young person now decides to go for a higher education, is tech the only ocean that river is going to end up to?
It's a good question.
Because, I mean, besides what we seem to know, but it looks like every other white collar job is going to be done by AI.
Yeah.
So maybe instead of asking you that, how do the children feel about this? Because now they're old enough to know that is a very unstable job market.
Yeah.
And I've heard a little bit of conversations between young people, but that you were day to day, do they feel excited, scared, unmotivated? What's the feeling?
I mean, I can say about this group. I think also to frame it, there's something happening where, this age group from 18 to 25 is a really important age. This is an age where you really are truly entering adulthood, and you're kind of the official system that's been holding you and telling you, okay, now you do grade 8 and then grade 9 and then grade 10, and it just stops. And so for people like for myself, of other generations, if they went into higher education, it was this transition period where you're still held by a process, you're still working towards a degree or diploma, but it was slowly the hands were coming off. Slowly it was like, okay, you have to do this more and more by yourself. And so the learners that I was working with in this project, they felt kind of excited. I would say a different range of what's going on there. But I did feel like they had, because technology was so much of a part of their life since the beginning, and they were all very fluent in using technology, I didn't feel the same type of fears as when I talk about my friends, that AI is going to take over or this. It was more kind of like, oh, well, technology is going to change the world, just like it's always been changing the world. So there's kind of a familiarity with it that I think, not to say that there weren't concerns, but it was a bit different. What I find though is that if now, because a lot of them aren't choosing to continue through university, this phase here there's something lacking, for the youth in this area, there's something lacking where they can get together, these 18 to 25-year-olds, and kind of share their process, right? They're saying like, what are you up to? Oh, I'm getting my driver's license. Oh, how do you do that? Oh, I'm doing this. These things that before would happen, at least for me, they happened when I was at university, right?
Yeah, I always hear about this area that people disappear when they're 18, 19, and then they tend to come in their late 20s, but there is a whole... The people that are here in the early 20s are usually partying.
Yeah, this is it. Yeah, because it's...
You don't have the university thing,
and it's making less and less sense. Because the old paradigm of you go to university, maybe you go into debt because you have to pay for it, but at the end you come out with a really nice job that pays really well, and you have a easier life. Well, now, like you said, AI is taking over all these jobs. So now I'm going to go into university, I'm going to spend all this money, I'm going to come out with a degree that's useless, and I have a student debt. This paradigm is breaking down for a lot.
But also, if you have prepared a young person to be creative, to do problem solving, to be cooperative, when they're 18, 19, I don't know if they need anyone else. If those skills are really with all the availability for information. University they give you connections. That's another whole different chapter. All schools, part of it is what you learn, and part of it is who you know.
This is it.
It's like private clubs.
They're also different, right? They're still individuals. So even if you have learners they all have the same skills. Some of them may feel more comfortable in leadership roles. So they're the ones that will go out and maybe start their own business, and if it fails, start another business. There's other people, even though they know how to hold a group and they know how to work in group decision making, they might be more of an introvert, and they may want to kind of just stay at home, take on online job, and so it's not necessarily because they have this that they all come out kind of entrepreneurs or creative
Also, there wouldn't be space for everybody doing the same
This
thing.
is it.
Yeah. Those who have that second personality that you describe, a little more introvert, do they feel frustrated that the world is demanding so much the other thing? Does it feel like there is no space to me because I'm just without ambition?
I'm. Yeah.
Because before you would be able to be, I don't know, a cobbler or a
Yeah.
you would do something that maybe it was a good craft
Yeah.
and it would give you a salary
Yeah.
and a decent life, an honorable life. But do we still have those possibilities?
It's
Do
interesting.
children want to be, I don't know, a carpenter?
I hope so.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I've had two people that are, I think they're quite deep into the tech world. And I had both these guys come up to me and ask me quite seriously about carpentry, if I could teach them or if I had apprentices, or because they were seeing that their job is going to be obsolete very soon, but robotics is very far behind. And so if they become something that's hands-on, this is going to take a long time. The AI can process the information, but to actually make a robot that can physically put the pieces together, they're very far away. So what I was getting from them is that there's now a flip, that now more people are moving into the trades and moving into these hands-on things because that's where they figure the jobs will remain.
I have a friend who is a plumber and he's buying his second,
Yeah.
upgrading to a bigger house.
This is it. Yeah. Which is a whole nother thing about trades, because I mean, I spent half my life in education and half in building. And it's interesting to see when I tell people I'm a carpenter, if I tell people I'm a teacher, the reaction, right? There's definitely a status there, right? I think subconsciously we think, oh, a teacher is higher than a carpenter in terms of, I don't know, intelligence or just societal status, which is such nonsense, because when I got into carpentry, I loved the fact that it was much more in line with this approach that I use now. It wasn't like, oh, here's the assignment, I want you to do this or that. It was like, go build a fence. Like, well, how do I build a fence? I don't know, figure it out. I don't know, start with the posts and then figure it out. So it was much more this, you had to, it was a different type of intelligence, right? Where you're being creative right on the spot and having to.
It's probably like you say, instead of a superior or lower, it's just different qualities or different skills, different sensitivities.
And the culture is a huge one, right? The culture, I mean,
What do you see Europe, America? What's the...
Yeah,
I mean, you're soft America. You're nice America, but still, what do you see in the flavor of the culture that is very...
Yeah, I mean, I would say in general, in Canada, we are much, I would say our system of governments and our culture and our values are much closer to Europe's than the United States. I mean, I find the United States is, individualism is really important. Whereas in Canada is also important, but we also have this kind of collective idea that I think is much bigger here in Europe. It's much more, Europe is kind of traditionally socialist and has this idea of a state that's going to take care of its citizens. So I think politically in this way, our society is set up that's almost in between the two.
So you hear a resonance.
Yeah. And so for me, coming to Europe is much easier that way. The big difference I feel between Canada and Europe is the age. I feel that Europe is rooted, it's established. There's traditions here, and in Canada, it's new. There's still this kind of pioneer spirit. There's still kind of, you can change anything you want. You can do anything you want. I mean, Europe exists as well, right? There's
but no, I see what you mean, because there's a way to read tradition that it empowers you, the fact that you have so much momentum from behind you, but it can also trap you.
Yeah.
I always felt the trapped version. I now, becoming older, I'm beginning to to feel that maybe I missed something, that maybe there are some traditions that felt empowering. I did not feel that, but maybe it was my own inability. Yeah, and now that I'm older, I have more maturity. But yeah, I can see that being new and being like starting from scratch, it gives you also a lot of possibilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing about it is it's a multicultural society, Canada. And so I grew up, like we don't even have a traditional plate. We don't have a traditional dish in Canada. We have poutine, which is like a thing you eat after you've been at the bar all night. It's not, it's not really, we don't have these traditions.
Did nature become that?
Well, I should say, I have to be careful with this because there's, I should say, for me growing up, what I would experience is that there would be like a spring celebration. And when I'd go to the spring celebration, they would have traditional Filipino dance from springtime. There would be a Colombian festival from springtime. There would be, Pakistani band playing. So I grew up with this idea that, okay, it's spring, humans celebrate springtime, and we have all these different ways of doing it, and you can join in the Filipino dancing, you can listen to the Pakistani band, you can participate in all of these cultures to a certain extent. And so the difference coming here is that, in Portugal, there's a very, the Algarve, it's not as clear, but in Portugal, there's a very clear culture, there's a very clear tradition. If you talk to a Portuguese person, you say, I'm going to Braga, they say, oh, you have to go try this cheese or this, right? There's this pride in it. And I really love both of those things, I think it's great. And I think in the Algarve, hopefully, the topic of foreigners and locals, this is a big one, but I'm seeing moments where these two come together, where in the foreigner community, there's this multiculturalism that I grew up with. It feels very comfortable. And yet at the Portuguese community, there's this traditional sense of how things are done, and it's tied very much to this place and this location. And I see moments where they kind of complement each other. And I think to me, this would be ideal, to find a way that both those worlds can come together and support each other. The big thing in Canada is the First Nations, right? So the people that were there before the Europeans arrived. And this is a whole nother topic.
It must be wild to know that you are from a place and you don't no longer control it, nor you are part of the politics. It must be wild, because now it's happening in some other parts of the world, that people live there and they tell you, fucking move, we're gonna destroy your house and now it's ours. And then you look at this field that was in your family for generations, and it must be a bizarre human experience.
And the beautiful thing that's happening here, when I grew up, it was history, right? I grew up, and the school I was at, we had quite a large First Nations community there. So I would be in class with First Nations, and they were around, and this was it. And they would often be one more group involved in the Filipino dancing, the Pakistani, and then now we have the Squamish Nation doing theirs, the Cowichan Nation. And so to me, it was done. The First Nations were over. We kind of took over their land. We killed most of them, and so it's done. And what's beautiful now is that the First Nations are finally getting through to people like me and be like, no, we're not done. We're still here, and in fact, we're not going anywhere. So let's make this work. You need to give us some recognition. You need to start engaging with us on a state level, on a cultural level, on a person-to-person level. We're not putting up with this anymore, that we've been erased. And there's this resurgence. I don't know if you call it resurgence because it's always been there, but now there's a space that is being created a lot, I would say, from active First Nations people who are really not accepting this anymore. And it's a beautiful, it's a really powerful time, I think. And the one thing I'm discovering from me is, I think maybe like you were talking about your tradition where you grew up, or the lineage, a lot of times you felt maybe trapped by it, or you weren't aligning with it. This is what I always felt in Canada. I really connected to the landscape. I mean, the forests, the rivers, the mountains, the ocean. It really is kind of my home. And yet the thing that was put on top of it, the cities and I never resonated with this. And now I have a good friend who's really involved in the First Nations community. He's showing me all of the culture and all of the beliefs. And I'm like, wow, this is,
well, the
this
culture,
fits, you know?
I guess in our experience, the culture was very much filtered by the institutions.
Yeah.
So one was huge for me, the church. It was very difficult for me to have a good relationship with the church of Spain in the 80s, you know, like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
And then also it came very fresh from a previous dictatorship, and then I'm from the Basque country, so there was the whole Basque Spanish thing. But so it felt like a time to break from something and to spring from a past that we were saying no to. And I know that this is very superficial, but yeah, it felt a time to give your back to tradition, because tradition was a prison.
Yeah.
But it was because it was that other tradition, that more Western patriarchal tradition. But I think what you were saying about the First Nations, I think what is important about that, you said, coming back or coming to the surface, or at least being heard, is that we need a new narrative of how to deal with trauma and with collective trauma. Because right now we are seeing, when you have suffered a lot of trauma and you don't heal it well, you are going to pass it on to the next ones. And we are having a great example at the moment of an unresolved trauma that is just moving on to the next people. So those groups who have suffered, whether it's racial, sexual, whatever, gender, how do we come out of our pain is so fundamental for where the world is going to go. Because if we come out of our pain wanting a retribution only, or revenge, even worse, which is very human, is understandable, but that an eye for an eye and the world goes blind is very true. So
there's we screened a documentary at Natasha's, When the Owl Calls Your Name. It's about this first, I think it was Three Nations. I think they followed Three Nations, but it was about First Nations on the west coast of Canada. And they were talking exactly about this trauma and this intergenerational trauma. And
because they got the children stolen and sent, like, this crazy
and
stories.
there's mass graves, and it's like, it's
super dark.
It's really, it's like as dark as you can get.
It's not just we conquer the country. There's a lot of stories.
It was like a purposeful mission to annihilate them and their culture, you know. And like with the kids.
With the kids, I heard stories that were
really crazy. It's difficult because on the one hand, I can really sit there and be like, well, I had nothing to do with this, you know. This wasn't, I would be the first in line protesting this if this was happening at my time. Yet I do feel so ashamed, you know, so ashamed that I'm reaping benefits from this process, right? That I grew up in this
How
place.
many generations separate you from, let's say, first arrivals?
First arrivals? Well, this would be, say, 1500 would be kind of, so
we're like between 10 and 20 generations. This is quite, Well, I'm 10, 20 generations from all other crazy shit. Everybody is, really.
But these residential schools, they were I forget when they closed the last one, but it's right up until the last century. Like I think 1980s, they still had them going. You know, so in this documentary, they show how these First Nations are using their traditional. They said, well, we have this intergenerational trauma, and so what did we do before the Europeans came? How did we solve this before? Because we were going through trauma before. So now they're taking their traditional ways of healing and working through things as a group, and also connecting it with modern science and technology, and coming up with these super effective ways to heal individuals and the community and the nation. But it's not
because
easy.
in their traditions, they always had ceremonies to deal with themes, and they always had the tribe coming together as a point of reference to hold healing.
I each nation had its own way of doing it, right? And um, I'm not familiar enough with exactly what was going on, but there was, I remember when we were in school, we went to a longhouse. So they had these big longhouses where the Coast Salish would live. And I remember that was just this big room. And they were explaining to us, all these families used to live in here together. So there definitely is a communal aspect to these things, but there's also this individual aspect, right? A lot of these nations had vision quests or types of vision quests where a member would go out into the wild and be completely alone, but that process was held by the community. So yeah, it's a bit of both,
That side, let's say the more mystical, spiritual side of the human development, is that something that is also present in this, when you said before, the relationship to myself, the relationship to others, the relationship to the world? I guess this permeates the three of them, yeah?
Yeah.
But any reference to meditation, to breathing, to prayer, to questioning what consciousness is that something present in your approach?
Yeah, very much.
As a questioning method, that's it. Even without the answers, just the questions, yeah?
Yeah, for me personally, I try to be present in everything I'm doing. And especially with this approach to education, I find the more present I can be, the more I can offer as an educator, because you're really looking at the group and what's unfolding right now, not thinking of, okay, I have to take this group here. No, if we have a conflict and it needs to be repaired now, it needs to be explored now, we stop whatever we're doing and repair the conflict. So that in general, it's this presence is there. What usually comes out is that, I shouldn't say usually, what has come out is, again, working with needs. So I can say an example of one of my students was going through her first breakup, and she was talking about all these thoughts running through her head and all these emotions and this big roller coaster that can come with a breakup. And she's just like, I just wish I had something to just like at least like get them quiet for a bit and just so I could relax and stuff. I was like, oh yeah, like you're not the first human to realize that, so here meditations, breath work, there's yoga, here's humanity's answer to what you're facing. And then it comes with openness. A lot of the kids I was working with come from hippie families. So as soon as you say meditation, they're like, no, get away from me,
Oh yeah, that's
a
the
lot of them,
pendulum. The
yeah, they're
pendulum
really
is
like,
going to the
yeah.
other side. Okay.
So it's yeah, it's sometimes you have to kind of be tricky, be a bit phrase it in different ways and present it in different ways. But often what will happen is, as they develop and get better at connecting with themselves, they'll see that their emotions can ruin things. They can uplift things, but they can also, a moment of anger can really destroy
Yeah, I
a
guess
lot of trust. And
that's the point. Yeah, like if you are focusing your problem solving engine
yeah,
only externally,
yeah,
you are not going to recognize your own needs, because some of those needs are not intellectually recognizable, they are somatically recognizable.
yeah.
So you call it meditation, whatever, yeah, but it's a moment of pausing and looking inwards.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if that's, is part of, listen, we're all over the place, we need a pause so we can,
Yeah.
something like that.
And a lot of times they would ask for it, They'd be like, man, it's so crazy. Like we're all like, can we do 3 minutes of just breath? Like, yeah, let's do it. A lot of times they wouldn't. A lot of times they'd like it.
I know,
it's
but
crazy.
but it would be part of the vocabulary that you guys have in common. Okay.
And also so there's the skills, there's the needs, and the other two parts of it is, one big part is challenges. So I think most people know about the comfort zone, the challenge zone, and the danger zone. That the comfort zone, the learning is quite low because you're doing things, you're almost on autopilot, and the danger zone is something that's super overwhelming, and like you just shut down. But in between, there's this challenge zone where you're trying to get You're trying to get the learner to do something that's new for them in some aspects, but familiar. And it's really, it's a challenge to find that challenge zone individually and for the group. And it obviously shifts because some kids may have a very big comfort zone for athletics, but a very small comfort zone for public speaking, and others vice versa, and whatever. And so in this idea of challenges comes challenges on all the levels. So on the self, on the other, on the world. And so this is, in my experience, usually the last area you kind of get to with a group is that you have worked through kind of we have to get along. So I'm going to listen to you, you're going to listen to me. And then we start identifying needs and we start seeing that actually that makes things easier. And the last one is really kind of then turning all of that awareness back in on themselves. And I started with just annoying them, basically. I started really trying to do things that made them feel uncomfortable. So pair dancing, this is like, if you ever want teenagers nowadays, any kind of like waltz thing or something, this is like the worst thing you can do. So we started doing this. But through that, we started exploring, well, what do you do if you feel uncomfortable? Right? What do you do? Some people just didn't participate. Some people did it, but were tense the whole time. And then you start saying, well, is there a way that maybe you could do this? And
because when you reject something, it's very easy to just say no.
Yeah.
But then if you have to zoom into the word no and say, what is it made out of? How many colors are there inside this no? Yeah.
And then at the same time, you've been working on all these skills of saying, hey, if I only work with people I like, I'm going to be very limited in my life. If I work on this skill of being able to work with people that maybe I disagree with, or people that I find annoying and they find me annoying, if I can work on these skills that I can work with different people, then I have a richer life. I'm much more open, I'm less stressed. And so then you start saying, well, what about myself? If I find something I don't like and I just push it away, again, I'm going to have a limited life. Right? If I work that muscle where, okay, this feels a bit uncomfortable, but I'm gonna stay here, maybe just for a few more seconds to really feel into my body. Is it really a full body no, or is it just maybe there's something here that I need to explore and I can stretch myself? So it's kind of taking the tools and stuff that we've been working with and turning it inward.
But what sounds interesting is not you telling them, but them realizing it. So you create the circumstances for them to have a realization.
And it's also, this is where the trust that's created by the educator showing them, hey, I can help you guys feel satisfied. This is where it comes in. I find it comes in hugely, because now you're going to some core things, and it really, first of all, the trust, because if you're really going to get into it, and the stuff that is really making them feel uncomfortable is usually the stuff that's quite painful and quite triggering. So this requires a level of trust that you're going to be able to know how to handle this information, but also this level of trust that you're going to give them a space to find out what works for them, but also not leaving them completely alone. So you're kind of working these both sides at the same time. But it's really this, I mean, it's a holistic system, and the last piece of it is experiential learning. So I mean, the classic example is if we're going to look at physics and we're going to look at how a car engine works, instead of reading about it in a book or watching a video, let's just get a car engine. Let's put it in front of us. Let's take it apart. Let's put it back together. This is the best way we can see how it works. And so this idea that we should be embodying learning. It should be something that we're engaging our body, our mind, and our spirit in what we're learning, then makes it easier for when we're going into these ourselves. They already have this understanding that learning isn't something that happens to me. It's not something that's done to me.
No, it's something that you are a learner.
It's life.
You become exactly.
Yeah. It's all around us. Every moment is a learning moment. Every moment, if we can be open to it, we can be in that space of curiosity, exploration, and learning.
Yeah. That place that someone would arrive at certain point in their life that they had become an expert on whatever, on tiles, on carpentry, on being a dentist. It also, maybe you stopped learning, at least about that, but it also came with a sense of comfort of having arrived to a certain, maybe a self-identity, a skill, also a way to get your finances. Like the whole thing created a package that was maybe limiting because you didn't outgrow it, but it was also safe.
Yeah.
That's gone, right?
I would say it's disappearing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then when you become a forever learner, that anxiety has to kind of be digested in some way because you will always need to expand what you understand reality to be and yourself to be.
Yeah.
But for the kids, is this new because they don't know anything else? So maybe this just they are integrating it easy, or do they feel anxiety?
I mean, yeah, it's obviously it's different for each individual. I think there is this part that comes with adolescence that, regardless of what's going on, this search for meaning, this search for identity, this search of, okay, I was my parents' child and now I'm becoming an adult, and so what am I gonna contribute to the world? Who am I gonna be? Who am I? So I think these questions bring a certain level of uncertainty and could be anxiety as well. They're in this phase of figuring out who they are. So I do see this this continuing, this present. I mean, it's interesting because sometimes I was seeing them get stressed over stuff that I thought would be easy for them, and other times they would take on these huge challenges and they would be completely comfortable doing it. And yeah, so it's an interesting space because in some moments you think, wow, these kids are capable of anything, because they're so used to just like problem, solve this, solve this, and they just have those muscles so ready to go. And yet at the same time, there's still moments where I saw them very much as kids, very much like, oh, you guys, wow, you really still have these big holes in understandings of how things work. Like I don't know, we did personal banking one day because they didn't know about this, and it's just they had no idea. Most of them had no idea how to balance. If I get €1,000 a month, how do I put this aside for rent and this for food? And they didn't know the difference between a credit card and a bank card. They didn't know, there's all these things that were missing. And yet at the same time, the day before, they had this beautiful, unfolding, compassionate discussion about mental health and their friend and how they could deal with it. So
Also because those are two different layers.
Yeah.
One is how to be a human, and the other one is how to be adapted to the system. And I'm not saying that you don't need to know how to be adapted to the system, but there are two different things. One is kind of, this is the game again. It's a set of rules, a set of customs, and the other one is really what is in your heart. So you are having the two going simultaneously. Difficult question.
Okay.
So in a very, very, very traditional type of education, boys and girls were separated. And then in a very, let's say, postmodern type of education, everybody's the same. So there is no gender. It doesn't matter who you are, you can do anything. Somehow my intuition tells me that it's somewhere in the middle. How do you address that in class, the differences between boys and girls, and more, because now there is no, because it's a very loaded question in the time we are, but it is also life. Like, that a girl is not going to react the same way as a boy is going to react. Different everything, how do you bring the conversation? Are they themselves that bring the conversation? I don't know. How does that play?
So there's two answers I can give. The first one is, this project I was at, there were a lot of kids that were exploring gender identity and using different pronouns. And there were parents that were very much against that. They wanted boy, girl, that's it. And so what I came up with was going back to this idea that adolescents are exploring their identity, their identities. And so we encourage this. We encourage them to explore all of their identities, their career identity, their loud identity, their quiet identity, and in that, definitely their gender identity, their sexuality, their sexual identity. The moment that they are asking for support from us as a group to change our behavior to help them in that exploration of identity, we are able to ask questions. So we are
Okay.
able to question, why do you want me to call you this pronoun? Why do you want me to address you this way? Why do you want me to...
Because you're expressing a need, then the other person has the right to understand why the need is in place.
So if I say a learner is the sex of a learner is a boy, a male, and that male comes in wearing a dress, which traditionally is a feminine, female archetype or whatever. If we ask, well, why are you wearing a dress? Well, no, I don't need to answer that, you know. I mean, in the group they would ask and they would answer, but they don't need to. If they come in and say, from now on, I want you to call me they, them, because whatever reason, then you're asking me to change my behavior to support you. So I then can ask you, well, why is that? Because I want to make sure I am truly supporting you. And that was the best agreement I could come up with, which got both sides. Because the people that were really against opening this up and getting into this gender identity pool, the biggest fear I found is they just thought that they had to accept it full stop, you know, that their kid now had to go there and had to start saying, oh, a boy isn't a boy and a girl isn't a girl. And they just wanted them to be able to understand that, no, you can, some people do this, but you can also not do it. You can question it. It's like anything else. So this was kind of the answer I found that at least in this group worked. Going back to this idea of boys and girls, you start with the group. And so if you have a group of boys, it's going to create a certain energy. But even within that group, you could have a group of boys that are very soft and feminine, but still with a masculine energy there. Or you can have a group of boys that are very masculine energy and very and a bit of softness. With girls, you could have the same thing. So the whole idea that you're starting with the group and you don't really have an idea, oh, we should have half boys, half girls. You're just starting with whatever group you have there. It is, yeah, it gets interesting because in one of the groups we were working with, we had 14 kids, and there was, at one point, I think there was only 2 girls, and yeah, like 10 or 11 13-year-old boys and these 2 girls, and yeah, it was
a sword and a shield to go to school.
You felt it, right? You felt it. And these boys were very much, they had a boyish energy, you know. I don't know if I can say that, but you know what I mean? It's like this boyish energy, and the girls had like a traditionally girly energy, I guess you could say. And so it really felt that this was not in balance for that group. It felt almost like get rid of the girls entirely and it would work, or bring in more girls, but this majority, but that was just for that group.
Yeah.
And in other cases, I could imagine if you had 2 very strong, if it was flipped and you had 2 very strong boys that had very strong personalities and their masculinity kind of filled the room, and you had 10 girls, that might be a balance that would work, you know. But all of it, usually it works itself out with the group, you know. And so in that case, in the end, we were looking to bring in more girls to the group, not to meet a quota, not to, you know, not because we thought we were making a statement about, no, simply the group, we felt the group was going to function better with more female energy in the group.
But you would take it from case to case.
Yeah. Or you could look at patterns, right? If we saw over and over again that the groups, you know, anywhere between a 60-40 split or something like that, because that's the other thing. I didn't sit in my room and come up with this pedagogy. It emerged from observation. Okay, now we need to decide something that's better than pasta and tomato sauce. So what are we going to do? And then from there, we discovered we also have this need. Okay, let's see what we can learn to do that. And so it kind of came together. And through that, for me and the learners I was working with, we started recognizing certain patterns. And so then we would say, well, yeah, it's not really a rule, but we just notice if we do this, things go smoother. If we have a round of clarifying questions before we make a decision, so everyone understands what we're actually talking about before we start saying if we agree to it or not, it makes everything go smoother. So we just use that. But it's quite organic in this way, you know? And so I would imagine with this boy-girl situation that with time, it would probably reveal itself as a certain pattern that seems to work good with kids in this group, in this area, you know.
Yeah. What I was wondering is, in general, in terms of education, that if you look at society, and maybe I'm oversimplifying a lot, but we had a system where men and women are different, but men are superior to women. Then at a certain point, altogether, we decided that was bullshit.
Yeah.
And then what came after that was, we're all the same. In a weird way, we had this kind of like, it doesn't matter, you're a man, you're a woman, everybody's the same. And I can feel that there is a even further maturing, which is saying, let's not be better or worse, but we are not the same. There are differences, and there are biological differences and sensitivities that if you just pretend that a woman is exactly the same as a man in a man environment, she's probably going to be fucking miserable. And if a man has to behave like a woman because there's no difference, he is going to be miserable. Is there in your database a kind of like a different way to approach this subject because she's a girl, or a different pedagogic approach because he's a boy? Is the masculine, feminine in any way playing a role in the way you express yourself or you deliver your teachings?
I think it makes me think of a couple of things. The first is that because this approach is starting with the learner, I would see this with learners that would come that would be diagnosed with something. They'd be neurodiverse, or they have ADHD, or and so there'd be different approaches with the parents. Some parents would say, we don't want any papers, or we don't take any medication. They kind of are saying we want to just kind of not treat it as if it's there, almost ignoring it, but not quite. And then there's other parents that would be showing lots of reports and saying, oh, this is everything you need to know, whatever. And for both of them, I'd say, listen, I'm not this, your child is not this. This maybe make up part of their world, but it's not who they are. So let me get to know them. Like, do they like dirt bikes? Do they like music? Do they like sleeping in? We get to know each other on that level. And then rarely I would have to go back and get the medical files. Because when you're tuning into someone's needs, if they're neurodiverse needs, if they're Down syndrome needs, if they're physically abused in the past needs, if they're just kind of regular needs for collaboration and communication, it's all the same process of figuring out what do you need to thrive.
Because then there it will be, what do you need as a old person, as a black person,
Exactly.
as a woman, as a poor. I like this needs thing. It's a good approach.
And it works. It's amazing how it works.
It simplifies situations just looking at it that way.
This is it.
What happens when two people or two students like really disagree in what the needs are? You just expand them?
Then they're not true needs. So true needs are universal human needs. So you can, if it looks like, usually what people do is they confuse needs with strategies.
But let's say you said before, they were going to the paintball and they identified that their need was adventure. If someone says, I identify that the need is chaos, you just want to break shit up because you're frustrated. And no, I don't want to break shit up, I want adventure. How do they deal with them? Or what is the process in nonviolent communication to identify the need?
So the idea is the need is something that is universal. So like breaking or destroying things, it wouldn't be a need. This idea for chaos, maybe you could guide them saying like, do you have a need for play? You want to just kind of get loose. And so
you would refine until you get into a universal.
It's a language, right? And so you learn, and also this about emotions, right? But the needs, I mean, I have a list on my fridge at home and I'm always looking at it.
How many are there?
There's like, on this one, I think there's maybe 50, But it's a practice in language, learning how to identify these needs and also emotions, because we're in general, very bad at expressing emotions. How are you? I'm fine. How are you? I'm good. Okay, if you look, there's a whole list of, if you're happy, are you exuberant? Are you jubilant? Are you ecstatic? Are you excited? These are all different forms.
I want to be jubilant.
Let's meet your needs, and then you and there's also a science to it, or an art. For example, I mean, in nonviolent communication, you observe what happens, right, with no judgment, and then you say how you're feeling about it, which is detached from what's going on, right? It can be detached. There doesn't have to be a logical connection between what you're seeing and what because you could be triggered, right? And then you look at your need underneath and you make a request. So yeah, you could say like, oh, I observe that if we were working together, say, observe, Igor, that you arrived at 9:30 on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and we agreed to meet at 9 o'clock. I feel very frustrated because I have a need for responsibility, and I have a need for autonomy, and also a need for collaboration. So I'm going to really ask you, if you're going to show up late, I'm going to ask you first of all to try and arrive by 9 o'clock, and if you can't show up by 9 o'clock, if you could at least let me know. This is kind of a classic. I'm sure the NVC people are going to be like, no, you forgot this, and right. But this is kind of the idea.
I love that there is NVC people.
This
There's
is
people of everything. There's people in everything.
But it's a language, right? And so, for example, if I say, oh, you're always late, and I feel betrayed, all of a sudden this is not nonviolent, because always, well, you're not always late. You were late 3 days. So now I'm generalizing, I'm putting you into a box. If I say feel betrayed, to be betrayed, someone has to betray me. So now, very subtly, I'm saying you're doing something wrong, right? Where really, I mean, I can have emotional reaction. I can say I'm feeling scared right now because there's a red car parked there. I'm just feeling scared. Well, yeah, I got hit by a car when I was a kid, but well, you've done nothing wrong by parking a red car there, right? It's my emotional reaction is not necessarily saying that you did something wrong. It's my emotional reaction can be completely illogical, right? I mean, most of the time there is a bit of a logic.
Do you know what has to be something fascinating? The first week in a relationship, when one of them is an NVC person and the other one is a normie, whatever normie.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a second,
Yeah.
let's rephrase. What you really meant to say.
Yeah. But we tried this, it didn't work, especially with teenagers, because teenagers, for me, I tell people all the time, the two things, if you have a teenager and you're like, don't know what to do, authenticity and fairness. If you can be authentic with them and you can be fair, it takes away 90% of the problem.
Because if you bypass with linguistics, it can also feel pedantic.
Exactly.
Yeah, like you are taking a position of authority by manipulating the language.
Yeah. And with so many of these things, NVC, sociocracy, a lot of times I feel people shift away from, okay, this is a tool to get us here.
And then the tool becomes the thing.
The tool becomes, we have to build an NVC conversation. No, we're trying to connect through a conflict. That's what NVC is for. So yeah, but what I found it very useful for was when the kids would start butting heads and being, oh, you're an idiot, da da da. Then there'll be a time like, whoa, what are we talking about here?
Because that's the neck of a conflict. That's
exactly.
You are in the middle of it.
So then you say, let's go back to observations. And observations, even if they use observations incorrectly, what's the point of observations? The point of observations is create a common ground, that we're both talking about the same thing. So even if they say, man, yesterday you were a complete dick, and the other one's like, yeah, I was a dick. At least the judge, NVC is like, no, that's judgment, that's horrible. But whatever, they found a common ground. So it's not perfect, but from there, sometimes you can move on, because authenticity kind of the fact that they're being authentic will kind of cancel out the fact that they haven't got the language down yet. Obviously, the more fluent they become, the easier they can get at being like, man, yesterday you arrived late by 20 minutes and I'm pissed off, I'm really frustrated, and they can get better.
There's a place for that as well.
This is it.
There's a place for saying you were fucking dick.
Yeah.
And then let's talk about it nicely, but
Yeah, this is it, right?
There's a place for that, yeah.
But this is what was happening with the kids, is they were tuning in. So the big thing about this whole system is that it depends on a culture of giving your word. So when we make the group decisions together, because there's no one, like, for this to really work, as the educator, you really have to step out of the authoritarian role and move into kind of like an elder role. You're not there to make them do anything, but you have a certain level of respect and hopefully a certain level of wisdom and trust that they're automatically going to look to you for guidance.
And you need to have self-respect for that
This
as
is
well,
that,
because
100%.
if you don't believe in yourself, if you don't, not arrogance, but you actually have to occupy that space without second-guessing yourself continuously. Yeah?
And yet at the same time, you have to have that openness. It's this, we were talking about this the other day, as a leader, you need to kind of present a certain level of confidence. But at the same time, there needs to be an element of like, but I don't really know what I'm doing. Like I'm pretty sure this is going to work, but yeah, there's always a level that I could be wrong. There's never this level of kind of that expert who's like, no, I know all of this and I can tell you everything. So it's really this, because they need to know that too, right? They need to know that even for me, who has run a lot of circles and done a lot of classes and have a lot of experience, that unless I'm failing, if I'm not failing, I'm not trying new things. And if I'm not trying new things, I'm not learning.
Yeah.
So I need to be.
But also because they know that when you supposedly would be failing,
Yeah.
then you would call them up to see, okay, so now I'm out of my depth. I have no idea how to deal with this. Anybody has an idea?
Yeah.
And then you involve them. Yeah.
This works especially well with the kids that are usually the biggest handful. This kind of goes back to this burnout question, because a lot of the things that teachers have from burnout, I think, come from discipline problems, you know, that they have to, which, I mean, they're set up to fail, right? You need to get 30 teenage kids to sit still in a chair for an hour, like hours on end, and listen to stuff that's not interesting to them. Of course, you're going to have kids that are acting out and they're bored. And so,
because the container itself is challenging.
The container itself is not built for adolescence, you know. And what I would get is with these kids that would come in that would be the first to rebel and to, you know, be disruptive in class or whatever, they would come and they'd try something, you know. They'd be like, hey, I'm chewing gum. Okay. You don't care if I chew gum? No, we have a need to maintain the cleanliness of the space. So, I mean, as long as you're putting the gum in the recycling, I don't. Really? Yeah. And then you see them just being like, wow, like this place is mine. There's no one above me telling me what to do. There are needs of the group. And as long as I'm respecting that, I can do anything I want. And then those kids usually have the biggest turnaround, because their whole life they've been screaming that they want to be creative and autonomous. And in the system, you can give them all of that because it comes with responsibility. And not to me, but to the other kids, right? The other kids are the ones that they're holding. And that's the culture of giving your word, you know?
Yeah. Because it's always nice to associate freedom with responsibility as soon as you can in life, because often we idealize freedom.
Yeah.
And then when we get it, we realize like it comes with a lot of, it's a high price tag. And as a kid, it's difficult because of course you want to be free from your parents, from the teachers, from...
But I mean, so many times, and this is also the authentic part and the fairness part, is that I would have kids come in. I had a group that they were German speakers and they wanted to speak German. And the agreement we had was that you speak in either English or Portuguese. Most of the kids spoke English, but hardly ever spoke Portuguese. But this group, this subgroup, was speaking German all the time. So they were isolating themselves. And the idea was, no, we need to mix with, because if you have 4 people speaking German and you don't speak German, it's quite a barrier to go in and ask everyone, right? And they were going on and on about this. And finally I said, listen, I really actually don't care if you speak German. I think it's good for you that you do this, but my life would be a lot easier if you were able to make German the 3rd official language, because then I wouldn't have to police you and make sure, you know, watch you and remind you. So go for it. This is what's standing in your way. You have 80 families here. They've all agreed to the English and Portuguese. So if you want to switch it to German, you're going to have to make a presentation. You're going to first have to go through the pedagogical council, and then the general circle, and then present to all the parents. And then you're going to have to teach, right? Then you're going to have to hire people that speak German. And then they were like...
It's easier to speak in English.
Next day, they're all speaking English, you know. But the thing is that they... You know, I wasn't trying to manipulate them.
You gave them away. It was just a long, long way.
It was a long way to go. And it's this idea of this, you can have this freedom. There's a lot of work for you to earn that freedom. And there's other alternatives. And so this can go anywhere, right? You know, if I'm teaching a class and people are like, this is boring. Cool. I want to get through these skills with you today. That's what I want to practice. If this isn't working for you, come up with a better idea. And then if they come up with a better idea, amazing. They felt empowered, super empowered, because they knew more than the educator, which is a great lesson to be like, I'm not, again, it goes back to this thing, I don't know that much better than you guys.
Him.
But it's not even, it's in the spirit of like, fantastic. We have a common problem, you know? It's not me and you, it's like us trying to solve this. And if they can't find a solution, then they admit like, oh yeah, what you came up with, I guess, is the best we can do. It is boring, but now I understand why we have to do it this way.
Okay. I have seen you a couple of times getting emotional. I don't know, maybe if we can zoom into that moment and something touches you when they get together, when what is it in this method? What do you see that it makes you go like, wow, we have hope? Because I think that's what I see.
yeah.
I think what I see in you is like, oh, when I see those things, there is hope for something.
Yeah.
And also, what has made you the man that is able to get touched by such things when some other people don't even see them? What has facilitated for you to be sensitive to that reality when people come together and help each other that is touching?
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, starting from the back and moving forward, I think for me is that I think like many of us, I've experienced a lot of suffering in my life, and I've caused a lot of suffering. And I went through a phase where I was in a very dark space. And I remember one day.
Back in your youth?
No, this was like, this is maybe like 5 or 6 years ago. And I remember one day I came out, and I mean, it was this situation where it was like, I was in the middle of a divorce. I was in between jobs. My dad was doing poorly, and it was like everything was piling. It was all coming at once, and I didn't have the tools to process it. And then my neighbor had this weird medical condition where his heart was going to explode, and then it was like, and this was like the last thing. And so he had his car that had been sitting there for weeks, and I was talking to his mom and saying like, oh, it'd be good to either disconnect the battery or take it out for a spin and whatever. And I remember she wouldn't let me take the car out, right? I even said, I'll pay for the gas just to keep the car going. And she wouldn't, because she didn't want to impose, because I remember it just came clear to me like, fuck, man. Like, we're all suffering here, like all of us are suffering. Everyone here is lonely or suffers. Something's going on. Like, why can't we just help each other? Why can't I just be like, just give me the keys. I drive it. It's no big deal. And it really was this clear thing of like, I don't want to suffer anymore. I don't want to be part of this suffering. And at the same time is where I met this group of kids. And so somehow there was a link there that I would see in them these moments where everything would just flow and everything would just work. So this kind of search that I was having was like, can we just not do suffering? Is this something we can just not do anymore? Like, can we collectively just get over this suffering thing? Just love each other, help each other out, and and then somehow these kids that were doing it again and again and again, and yeah, I mean, I have a pretty good bullshit detector, like when you're kind of like, yeah, okay, they're faking it or this, but this was so pure, Igor, it's so like, it was because it wasn't like, oh, thanks for sharing. It was, it was mixed in with like, God, you're ugly, but you're right. It was all these jokes and this teasing, and it was so authentic. Yet at the same time, it was crazy. And then in juxtaposition to that, I would have these meetings with the kids where I'd be in this state of like, wow, they've got it. They figured it out. And then I'd go to working with the adults, and it'd be like, oh, and me too, I would get in this other phase where I'd have to be right, and I'd have, and I'd be like, wow, how can we not do this, But yeah, it gave me, I mean, for the longest time, people would be talking about all these problems in the world, and, and I would just be smiling because like, we're sorted. These kids that are coming behind us, they have this power. They have like they're gonna work this out. They're gonna figure this all out.
Also, because the way you describe it, it doesn't feel like you have to teach them compassion.
No.
It feels like you kind of just take away those obstacles that don't let them see it, and it just comes up from within.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to believe that, but
it
sounds like I have had that experience also with kids. Yeah. Beautiful. I'll ask you to send me something so I can write it in the description with your work and how to contact you.
Yeah.
But now the last bit, anything you would like to say, anything about your personal projects that people might be able to find you and work with you, or anything that is interesting you at the moment that you feel passionate about?
Yeah. So I went through a transition last year. I was involved with this one project that I co-founded with a small group, and I after a lot of group decision making, I decided to leave that project. And so now I've taken kind of this approach that was developed in that project, and I've taken that with me, and I just have this, and I really believe in the power of this. So now I'm in this phase of just openness to whoever feels like this might be useful. I think it's really adaptable to almost any situation, even in traditional schools and beyond. And so I'm starting to play with it myself. I had a few families that came and they wanted, one day a week. I had their kids come in, so it's a small group, and I'm working with it there. I'm working at another project where I have one of actually my ex-learners coming in, and now he's co-educating with me to the
Oh,
new group,
wow.
right? Because
How old is he, she?
he's
He.
16. Yeah.
Okay.
And because I was talking to these people that were running this project and they had this day that was quite open, I said, listen, I'd love to bring in this idea of skills and needs and challenges and experiential learning. They said, that sounds great. And then I thought, but it'd be great to have someone, who can I get in that could work with me on this? And I was like, oh, how am I going to train someone and teach? And I was like, man, these kids, they know it better than me. They lived it. So yeah, I called them up and he said, sure. And so this, I'm really kind of letting things emerge this way. I'm doing private tutoring as well, using the same approach as working on a one-to-one. And I'm in the process of building it's almost finished. I have to do a few tweaks of kind of a website that lays this out. And I have a parenting collective as well, where we get parents together, and for 2 hours a month, we put the parents first and the kids second. So we talk about the experience as parents. But all of this is using the same base of kind of working with the group, working with the needs of the group. So yeah, I'm really I'm in this openness right now of seeing.
And you're passionate about it. It's beautiful to see.
I
know when you love what you do, but it's beautiful to see.
Yeah, it's really. But this is the thing, is that, and it's not just me. We had, part of the program that we were running, we'd have educators come in, right? So art teacher, music teacher, they'd come in, and some of these are educator. The art teacher had 40 years of experience, and just like, I've never seen a group like that. I've never seen this before in education. So and I mean, there's so many stories of parents coming in and like, my child is completely different, and it's not just us, but yeah, there was magic happening with this, and yeah, I like magic.
Beautiful. Yeah, Neil, it's been a pleasure. I have enjoyed a lot, and if we don't leave anything behind, we can close it here. It's been a wonderful conversation, and I hope it's been inspiring for people. If they're like I was for many years, where should I bring my kid? Like, this sounds like a very, very engaging and active and committed middle way.
Yeah.
And I think we need something like that. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.